What's up, YouTube? Capital G here, giving you guys that Crystron deck profile that people were asking for when I showed off the Crystron replays versus Blue Eyes Game 1 and Game 2. And I feel like Crystron are a really interesting deck. I do think they're a little underrated. I think one of the reasons why they don't get a lot of notoriety is currently they just don't have all their support. They're like Boss Monster as of right now is for Nixon, and it's an okay card. Like, it does have some uses. It's really good for just getting rid of like back row, banishing back row from your spell and traps from your opponent's graveyard, which is really nice against, like, you know, metaphors when they're trying to set up their pendulum scales, and you can just blow that out. Plus you can get rid of like Metaphor's Fusion, and it can really rock them. Or against like Paleozoic, that deck likes to set a bunch of back row, you guys know. Plus they like to summon their monsters from the graveyard, you can wreck that as well. But when you're playing against like ABC or heroes and the monsters are beating the crap out of you, Phoenixin doesn't really do all that well against the mon. Like, you need to be able to kill ABC Buster Dragon, and that's where Gliongander comes in. Gliongander isn't in the TCG, which is definitely hurting this archetype, but I believe it is coming out in Raging Tempest. I don't think it's Maximum Crisis. I'm pretty sure that it's Raging Tempest, and this card, in my opinion, is just better than Phoenixin. One, statistically, you get 200 more attack. It's just a better attacking monster, and it just gets rid of monsters. Like, it gets rid of more imminent threats, and it can get rid of monsters in the graveyard just like Phoenixin can. It's a complete counter to something like Norden. You guys know how heroes and decks like Mermill like to use Norden basically to just make that incredible, totally awesome board. This card completely counters it, because you can basically summon, or you can basically banish up to 3 monsters from your opponent's field and or graveyard. Now, it does target. I messed up on the last video. I said that it didn't target, but it does target. But think about it, right? Let's say you're able to banish the Norden, banish the card they were going to summon back from Norden, and banish another monster. Like, your opponent's going to be devastated. At the same time, this deck can also Trishula your opponent during their turn, which you guys saw him go into Gliongander and Trishula basically in back-to-back turns. The guy was just not able to recover because he had lost too many resources. And there's a bunch of cool things that Crystrons can actually do. One thing I like is Crystrons actually benefit from synchro summoning during their opponent's turn. For one, they have a field spell that basically lets you draw cards anytime that you summon or synchro summon a Crystron monster, which is cool because if you're drawing during your opponent's turn, immediately you're able to just, you know, put those cards to work as soon as your draw phase starts and as soon as your turn starts. And then there's this card that no one has really ever played. Like, I don't remember any deck ever playing this card. It's called Starlight Junction. I don't know, it's probably from the 5Ds era, probably from like Starstrike Blast or Stardust Overdrive if I just had to guess. But it's a card that basically, when you synchro summon during your opponent's turn, you get to target a card on their field and spin it back to the deck, which, I mean, just think about combining that shit with Trishula. Like, I'm gonna get a card from your graveyard, 2 cards from your field, and a card from your hand. Like, are you going to recover from that? Because I just don't see it. Like, you're losing 4 cards in one turn. Like, I don't really see people recovering off of something that potent. I think that Ties of the Brethren makes this deck's turn ones a lot more consistent. You'll notice that basically everything in this deck, with the exception of Maxi, which you don't really have to count, basically everything in this deck is a machine monster, and you're going to synchro summon into a lot of machines as well. I think that a lot of this deck is level 3 machines, including Steam Synchron, which essentially has the effect of the Crystrons built into it. The reason that you run it in this deck is because it is a level 3 machine and because it has that same effect. So there's just a lot of natural synergy. The deck works well with draw support as well. Supply Squad works well on this. It works well in Yang Zings too, because when Yang Zings get blown up, they just replace themselves and you get to draw cards with Supply Squad. So imagine you're blowing your monsters up with Supply Squad, or they're getting ran over. You're drawing cards. You're synchro summoning during your opponent's turn. Your field spells letting you draw cards as well. And then when it comes back to you, you have things like Upstart Goblin. You have 1 day of peace to get to your power cards like your Solemns and your Soul Charge. You guys know that Soul Charge basically works in every synchro deck ever, so you're definitely going to run Soul Charge. And because you do banish a decent amount of monsters, Pot of Avidity actually works pretty well in this deck, and it obviously can be used kind of as a counter to like ABC. You can just fuck around. You can put their pieces back in the graveyard so that their Buster Dragon can't tag out as well. I don't know. I think this deck is kind of fun. Maxi is also a little bit of draw support, but I mean, we can't really count that. Like, every deck runs Maxi. Oh, one thing I almost forgot. This deck can actually summon Stardust Warrior, which is really cool because Stardust Warrior obviously is a card that can negate summons, but if Stardust Warrior actually dies, just just cross your fingers, pray to God that it doesn't get kaiju'd. If it dies by battle or card effect, not only can you summon Stardust Charge Warrior, and it's considered to be synchro summoned, which means you will draw a card, but if you have Starlight Junction on the field, not only will you get the draw card, but then you can spin your opponent's card like at the same time, which is dumb. Actually, hold on, is this an if? Please be an if. Actually, no, hold on. It's not an if, so we could have something possibly mistiming. I guess you wouldn't be able to use all of these if they're not all ifs. They could mistiming, but if they don't, that would be a really cool play. And the last thing I really like about this deck is, even though you don't necessarily play battle traps or anything to like stop attacks, this deck does have a couple of ways to, I guess I could say, limit your opponent's battle phase. Crystrons have a monster and Amatrix, which basically special summon monsters on your opponent's side of the field have to be switched to defense. You synchro summon this during your opponent's battle phase. It does not target, so it's an effect that's extremely difficult to play around if you don't have Solemn. And there's even this really obscure card called Powered Insectron, which kind of does not quite the same thing, but it has sort of the same result. When this card is synchro summoned this turn, this card cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. Also, you take no damage, so that's just a way during your opponent's turn you synchro summon this. You're not going to take any damage, and it's going to survive. So you could potentially turn this into, I don't know, turn it into something else, like, you know, synchro up into this motherfucker in the Stardust Charge Warrior or something like that. Basically, if you can summon Quantum and the Powered Insectron, then basically you'd be able to go into Charge Warrior. And Charge Warrior is a very strong card if you can back it with like a Solemn or something like that. So anyways, just wanted to show you guys the deck profile, talk a little bit about the deck, and give me your thoughts and opinions on Crystron. I think maybe, what do they need? I think they need a couple more cards to get their I think they need like a theme version of Avarice slash Pot of Avidity. Like they need a couple of cards like that can help them just recover, because they do burn through a lot of cards. It would be nice if they had Pot of Avarice, but obviously it's banned in the TCG. Anyways, leave that in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already.